welcome to UCL and thank you for your interest in studies in law at UCL. I am Olga Thomas. I am the faculty tutor and the undergraduate admissions tutor at the Faculty of Laws here. I understand perhaps better than most people how difficult it is to decide which degree program to follow, which university to attend. And these are very important decisions in one's life. Where you study, the educational experience you have, the people you meet, the people who inspire you and enthuse you, are very important for the rest of your life. I look back at my own university years, not just with a tremendous sense of fondness, but also with this stark realization that where I am today, what I have achieved, who I am today, is so directly related to my university education. So these are difficult decisions, but very important decisions to get right. And I see my role today as doing exactly that, helping you decide whether studying law and whether studying law at UCL is the right choice for you. Because if you find yourself in an educational environment that supports you and inspires you, you will not only excel, but you will also enjoy the time there. So I'm going to start with the simple question, why law at UCL? I'm sure in the course of today you would have heard all sorts of wonderful things about UCL, but one additional comment I want to make particularly about law is that UCL was in fact the very first university in the UK to offer law as a degree subject. So we have actually been doing it longer than everyone else, which is why we do it better than everyone else. We were the first law degree faculty to admit women and to admit students from minority ethnic backgrounds as well, something that we are very proud of to this day. And here it is, the Faculty of Laws. It's housed in Bentham House, as you will see. We're very lucky to have a single building in which we all exist. Students of all years are not broken into different colleges. We're all together. All the academic staff are there as well, and most of our teaching actually takes place in the faculty. It is a very vibrant, exciting, and friendly environment. It consists of 65 full-time members of staff and 45 part-time members of staff, and our annual intake is 175 students. So we are relatively small. We are in fact the smallest law school amongst the top Russell Group law schools, something that we don't intend to change at all, despite the financial pressures that universities are under these days. And the reason for that is that we feel the most enjoyable way of learning and teaching is actually doing it in small group teaching, and that we remain committed to. What I think is the best aspect of Bentham House is that it provides a very intellectually stimulating society, but it is also a very happening social environment. There is a wealth of opportunity for students to engage not just with their academic interests, but also with their other talents. There are events going on every single evening in the faculty. They could be career events, they could be social events. But what I remember very clearly from when I first joined UCL was this torrent of activity that surrounds you whilst you're there. So the one thing I will promise is that if you're lucky enough to join us, you will never be bored. You will always be inspired. You will never be lonely. You will always be surrounded by intellectually active people who are interested in contributing to our community. You will, of course, be joining one of the best law schools in the country. In fact, as of this year, we are officially the best law school in the country. And I will share with you the league tables for the law schools in the UK. And after many years of being consistently in the top 5, we've made it to top 2 for 2 or 3 years in a row. We are now at the number 1 position. I know league tables should be taken with a pinch of salt because, of course, they reflect the views of the person running the survey. But what you're looking for is consistency. You're looking for a faculty that consistently appears at the very top tier, and that we certainly are. Why is that important to you? Well, it's important to you because you're not the only people who look at league tables. Employers also look at league tables. So when the university from which you've graduated is doing so very well, so does the value of your degree go up as a result of that. It also means for you that you will be taught by some of the best legal minds in the country and in fact the world. The other big decision that you have to make if you are considering applying for law is whether to study law in London or outside London. And there is a huge difference for the study of law in particular in deciding either one. I have been very privileged and I've studied in both a university in London and outside London. I can tell you that is certainly the case. Why is that? London is the centre of law. You have the Old Bailey, and you'll see a picture of it right there, the top criminal law court in the land. You also have the Royal Courts of Justice, where all the top civil cases in the country take place. You may recognize the image of it actually from the news. You often see celebrities coming out of that arch at the very bottom there. And they're both a very short walk away from our faculty. So how does that change your educational experience? It means that because the main courts are so close to us, if you're having a lecture on a big criminal law issue and there is a case currently going on in the Old Bailey on that very issue, you might be able to go, just walk there over your lunch break and watch that case unfold. And that brings law to life. Something that you would not do if you were studying somewhere far away from London. But thinking a little bit more about your future career prospects, there is another reason why location is so very important. It enables us to keep very close links with the profession. The barristers are housed in the Inns of Court, which are very near the law school, the judges as well. The city with the top city firms, again, a stone thrown away from us. It enables us to bring members of the profession into the faculty on a weekly basis to interact with the students. Some of them teach some of our courses, others give public lectures, others judge our moods or our debates. So it is quite the norm that most of our students will get to know quite senior members of the profession during their studies, which of course increases their chances of securing placements, internships, summer placements, and of course their career prospects in the future. They are able to meet their future employers during their studies, which is quite unique. I have myself been a graduate of Cambridge, and I was a practicing barrister in the UK. And I can tell you that at the end of a very long day at work, the very last thing I would want to do is catch a 2-hour train to get myself back to Cambridge to give a guest lecture there to the students. Whereas for us, it's just a 5-minute taxi ride and they're here. And that is an incredible opportunity. The other way in which you benefit from it is, of course, that getting to know our faculty. Members of the profession are also very generous in sponsoring prizes and scholarships and bursaries. So we receive excellent financial support from the profession, which goes directly to our students. Most students who are thinking about applying for law have never studied law before. That is actually the case. So it's quite difficult making a decision to study law when you haven't done it. You don't know what to expect. Most people know what studying chemistry or maths or English literature is like, but what is studying law like? And it's even more difficult with that in mind to then decide which degree to follow. And there are, roughly speaking, 3 choices. You can do the straightforward law degree, the traditional 3-year law degree, the LLB. And what that entails is 3 years of studies. You do 4 subjects in each year. All the subjects covered in the first 2 years are compulsory. And therefore your degree will be a qualifying law degree. It will be a degree recognized by the Law Society and the Bar Council and enable you to practice should you wish to do so. And then in your 3rd year, you have an endless list of optional subjects, 30-odd optional subjects to choose from. And you specialize, although of course we still teach at undergraduate level, in areas from the socio-economic, from the family law, to the more corporate, commercial, finance-oriented subjects. About half of our students take the traditional law degree, but then you have the option of undertaking a program of study with an element of study abroad. The courses which are in blue ink on the board are what we refer to as 3+1 courses. You spend the first 2 years, as would be the case with the traditional degree program in UCL. You undertake all the compulsory subjects, and then you spend your 3rd year of studies in one of our partner institutions studying the local law. And as you will see, we currently have collaborations with universities in France, Germany, Spain, Australia, Singapore. You then return for your 4th and final year of studies when you do your optional subjects here. The other alternative is to do what we refer to as a 2+2 law degree, the ones listed in red color. And what they involve is the opportunity to qualify in 2 jurisdictions. You do the first 2 years of studies with us, completing all the compulsory subjects here, and then you do 2 years of studies in our partner universities, either in Germany or in New York, in Columbia and New York, where you do all the compulsory subjects of that degree program. So by the end of it, you have essentially completed the qualifying law degree in 2 jurisdictions. If you see yourself being geographically mobile in your life, and in fact, law is a very transnational discipline these days. Most big city firms have branches in other jurisdictions. Actually having an element of exposure to a different legal system in your degree does increase your employability prospects. So provided you can speak the relevant languages, it is something to seriously consider. A few words about the teaching and learning experience here at UCL. And I personally feel that this is what we get exactly right. This is where we're so very different to other universities. In what sense? I mentioned it earlier on that we are committed to small group teaching. And this is one of those questions that you need to be asking universities that you're considering applying to. How many students are in the year? How is the teaching done? Is it done in lectures and seminars or lectures and tutorials? And how many students are in each tutorial? Now here at UCL, we place great emphasis on tutorial teaching. And the maximum number of students you will get in each tutorial is 8. So it is essentially a big table with 8 students around it, me as the lecturer or tutor at the head of that table, discussing reading material that had been circulated to the students before. You will have the lecture in advance, where the lecturer will explain the law and also share with you his or her views on the law, but it is then up to you to go and read the relevant cases that you have been referred to and start doing the thinking process yourself. And then when we come together in small groups, we discuss the law. Now, law 20 or 25 or 30 years ago, when I was at university, was taught in a very different way. You just had to learn the law, memorize it, know what the cases said, know what the statute says, and that was it. This is not how we teach law at UCL. We adopt a very broad, multidisciplinary attitude. We look at the widest possible socio-economic context of law. We look at the global context of law. So we don't just want you to know what the law is. What we are really interested in and what we have endless discussions about is whether the law is fair and just, and what are the implications of a decision, not just for the people in that case, but for the society at large, for the community, for the governance of that country, and in fact, for the world at large. So if you have been the sort of person who is interested in the bigger questions, if you watch the news and find yourself shouting at the TV, this is so unfair, then the way we teach here you will thoroughly enjoy. The other opportunity that small group teaching gives us is to enable people to participate. There is no person in a tutorial who will not say something. In fact, to be honest, at the beginning of the course, the very beginning of the first year, people tend to be a little bit shy. But by the end of the first term, I find myself refereeing rather than teaching in tutorials, because students are so actively engaged in debating and disagreeing about how cases should be interpreted. So it is a very fun way of teaching and learning. And I'm never surprised, year upon year in the National Student Survey, we get one of the highest ratings for our teaching quality. Our students tend to be extremely satisfied with the teaching they receive from us. And I said, I think it is because of the small groups that we used. The other thing we do, which again, it's quite different to how other universities do it, is we offer what I refer to as an enriched learning experience. Studying law will probably be quite different to how you imagined it to be. We tend to think of lawyers as public speakers in front of packed courtrooms, cleverly questioning difficult witnesses, reducing them to tears, giving hard rendering, pleas in mitigation. But actually, the reality of it is that the average law student will spend most of his or her time in the library reading cases, preparing for tutorials, writing essays, and and sitting in lectures. That's pretty much what you do. So one of the questions you need at some point to ask yourselves before you apply for law is, do you enjoy reading? Because there is a lot of reading that needs to be done when you're undertaking a law degree. And law books tend to be quite thick. They are 300 to 400 pages long, and there are no pictures in them. So as you can imagine, I find it fascinating reading because it's about real people, things that happen to them, and how the judges try to reach a fair settlement or fair resolution. But there is a lot of that. Now, to make your existence as a law student a little bit more fascinating, here at UCL we place a lot of emphasis in student-led law-related activities that bring law to life and develop some professional skills with you. And I'll give you some examples. The most important thing to us is mooting. And I don't know if you've heard about mooting before. Mooting is essentially a mock appeal trial. We get two pairs of students acting as advocates and basically in front of a row of judges presenting legal argument, fighting over a particular point of law. The person who wins the moot is not necessarily the person who won on the point of law, but the person who argued the best. And we take it that seriously that, as you will see, we actually have a court, a mock court built in the middle of our law school. So I will encourage you in the course of the day to go into Bentham House and to visit the moot courtroom, because it's quite an experience. The smell of the leather, the wood paneling, it is very much like walking into court. We receive a lot of funding from a lot of generous donors and city firms who sponsor our competitions for mooting, and we compete nationally and internationally, and we have a phenomenal record. Like, for example, this year, we've won the London Mooting Shield. This is a competition between all the London law schools, a mooting competition. It's been running for 7 years, and I think we've won it 5 out of the 7 times. We've won the Essex Court Chambers Moot, which is the most prestigious moot in the country. But we also engage in other things, not just mooting. Things like client interviewing, debating. All of this give you opportunities to develop those skills that the employers are looking for. The other innovation for us is the Centre for Access to Justice. Now, this is pioneering in every respect. It is the only one that exists in this country. Officially, it was launched earlier this year, but it has been running informally for the last year and a bit. And what it is, it enables our students to work in a pro bono law clinic. It enables them, under the supervision of a solicitor that we employ, to work on real cases. Members of the community who cannot afford legal advice walk into the faculty, bring difficulties to our students who then have to research their case and actually take the case on all the way to presenting the case in court. Normally employment, like the tribunals, we do a lot of employment work, welfare, education, expulsions from schools. And our students get involved in this. And all the students who take part in it say it is one of the most fulfilling aspects of a law degree. You do not get this opportunity in any other law school. And I will encourage you to go onto the website, because we do have mini videos of the students who have engaged with the Access to Justice clinics, just describing their experiences. And they're phenomenal. They're very impressive. A little bit about the application process, and unfortunately this is where the bad news is. As you can imagine, being one of the top law schools, competition for places is very intense. As admissions tutors, I can tell you for the details and the facts. We receive in excess of 2,700 applications each year for 175 places. And most of the applicants do meet our minimum requirements and in fact exceed our minimum entry requirements. So although I know people at your stage of life absolutely obsess about your A-level results, for us it is a very small aspect of the consideration of your application. What will get you into UCL Laws is not your results. We of course want people who can perform well, but that is not what we're looking. We're looking for a very particular type of applicant. What are minimum entry requirements? Currently we ask for an A star and 2 A's at A levels, or 39 in the IB with at least 19 points in the highest. We also ask students to take the LNAT test. And I've put the website of the LNAT test. What is the LNAT test? It's the National Admissions Test for Law. A lot of the top universities, law schools, have adopted a standardized entrance test to help with the competition for places. You don't actually have to come in and take the test. You do it online, but you actually have to go to a center, a dedicated center to take the test. You can't do it in the privacy of your own room. It is not a knowledge test. You're not expected to know any law. In fact, you're not expected to know any subject whatsoever. It is a skills test. It is a snapshot of how you think at this stage, which enables us to decide whether you have developed those reasoning and arguing skills that will help you survive a law degree. And the test consists of 2 parts. The first part, 95 minutes long, consists of 12 passages. They're everyday passages from books or from broadsheet newspapers. And then you're given multiple choice questions on an argument that was presented in the passage. And what we're trying to see is, are you able to engage not just with the world of knowledge and fact, but actually engage with the world of ideas and arguments? If someone is saying something and they have a view, are you able to follow how they present their view, to agree with it or disagree with it? And that is what that part will test. The second part of the test, and I have to admit that here at UCL Laws, we place a lot of emphasis on it, is a very short essay writing part. You're given a choice of 3 titles, and you're given 40 minutes to write a very short essay, a page long. The titles tend to be along the lines, I'll give you a couple of examples. Do terrorists have rights? It's an example. Or women over 45 should never be allowed to have children. So there is no right or wrong answer, and there is no right or wrong opinion. But what we want to see is, firstly, that you can formulate an opinion, and then how you substantiate it, how you support that opinion. Because pretty much that is what we do every single day during a law degree. We have an opinion about a law, and then students will argue against each other as to which opinion is prevailing. So that is what that tests, and we will look at the essay both to make sure that you have good command of the English language, of course, but also to ensure that you are able to engage with the world of argument. Most of us have opinions about things around us, and most of us have one reason. So if you hold a point of view and ask you why do you hold a point of view, most of us immediately have one argument. What you need to force yourself to do is actually think of a second argument, and a third argument, and a fourth argument. And there is no preparation that you need to do for the LNAT, but what I would advise you to do is actually go onto the website, because they do have past papers that you can look at and see the type of questions. And the other thing you could do is just, in the weeks leading up to it, watch the news, pick up a paper, look at something that is happening and say, what do I feel about this? You know, am I in favor or am I against? Do I think this is fair or do I not? And then just challenge yourself. If I have to convince someone who had the opposite view, what arguments would I use? That is the sort of thinking that you need to adopt to be able to cope with law. The other thing I wanted to mention today is our selection criteria. So as I explained, we've got about 2,000 people, all of whom have met our minimum entry requirement. How do we choose the 175 who will be made offers? It is very difficult to reduce it to a finite list, but I've put a couple of things just to sort of help you with the preparation of your application form. The first overarching statement I want to make is that we are not looking for achievement. What we're looking for is potential. So we're not just going to choose all the people who have 4 A stars. That is not how we do selection. We want the right people for law. And that doesn't necessarily mean they will be academically the highest achievers. So we're looking for potential. In what respects? We will, of course, look at the academic profile. But the reason we do so is to ensure that the applicants can cope with intense, sustained workload. Because that's what the law degree will be like. So we want to make sure people do not crumble under the weight of a lot of work and that they can perform reasonably well. I often say to students that the first year of a law degree feels more or less like undertaking 4 A levels. That's where I would place it. So it is a step up, but it's not a difficult step. So we want to see that people are almost operating at that sort of level. The second criterion I've put down is motivation for studying law. That is extremely important. And we will primarily look at the personal statement to assess your motivation for law. Now, what does motivation for law mean? You're motivated to study law. It does not mean what most people put on their statement in the first line: I have wanted to be a lawyer since I was 5 years of age, or I've always wanted to be a lawyer because everyone in my family is a lawyer. That is not demonstrating that you're motivated to study law. What is it? In my mind, motivation to study law is two things. Firstly, it's an understanding of what studying law entails. And secondly, it's a reflection of why you think law is right for you or you are right for law. So looking at the first one, most people will not have an idea of what studying law will be like. So we want to see that you have made concerted effort to find out what it's like. What sort of things could you be doing? Well, you can pick up a couple of very introductory basic books. There are lots of them on the market. I would recommend things like Studying Law by Glanville Williams, or Letters to a Law Student, or The Law Machine. Just do an internet search and immediately you'll see all these elementary, basic, introductory books to law. And just read through and see, well, is this the sort of thing that I want to be spending 3 years of my life doing? And mention it in your personal statement that you've taken that step. But there are other ways. You can walk into your local court. It's free, anyone can walk in and just watch a couple of cases unfold and talk about them in your personal statement. What about it made law appealing to you? Was it the arguments you followed? Was it actually the presence of the barrister? Was it a sense of fairness or injustice about what was happening? That's a very good introduction to law. You can attend university masterclasses, summer schools, introductory sessions. I know we run quite a few. I give a lot of talks during the summer, a lot of sample lectures. Sign up for some of those, just to give you an indication of what exactly a law lecture will be like. So take steps to introduce yourself to the world of law. Of course, legal placements, trying to do sort of a short period in a law firm are ideal, but we understand that they're very difficult to get and not everyone is able to get them. So try and think a little bit more widely. Go to your local Citizens Advice Bureau and say, can I just do your filing for a day? Can I shadow one of you for the day? Just to see law in action. The second part of the motivation is, are you well suited to study law? What about you and what you have done so far in your life shows us that you've got the skills? Are you a good public speaker? Think about what are the things that would be needed for me to excel in law. Good arguing skills, problem solving, have you done big projects? It could be everything and anything you have done. Think about it in terms of what law entails. I often say running a marathon is fantastic preparation for studying law, and you should write about it in your personal statement because it's about that prolonged, sustained, intense workload that goes into it. And of course, there are times during your preparation for a marathon that you want to give up. And there will be such times during your law degree. But this sort of stickability factor, as I call it, you stick things to the bitter end. That's a very good example of a skill that we are looking for. Another example I saw recently in a personal statement, which I thought was very good, is someone who works part-time on the customer complaints line of Tesco's. And that is fantastic preparation for law. Why? Because you're dealing with a difficult audience, someone who has a problem, a complaint, and they're bound to be confrontational difficult. You have to use your communication skills, your arguments, to actually reach a resolution. That's being a mini lawyer. So try and think about even simple things you've done, but what skills have they used and would they be relevant for law? Informed interest in current affairs, as I explained, we teach law in its widest socio-economic, political framework. So from that point of view, of course, you need to be interested in what is happening around you. Communication skills, very, very important. Law is the discipline of language. To a lawyer, being reckless and being negligent are two entirely different things. And we spent about 2 weeks of lecturing trying to define the difference between those two words. So choose your words very carefully. We will go through your personal statement with a tooth comb. So do the same. Write it and rewrite it and choose the right words for it. We will also look at your essay to make sure that your written communication skills are very strong as well. Reasoning ability, I've mentioned it, so I'm not going to go through it again. This idea of being able to engage, formulate, develop, and defend argument. A question I often get, and I mentioned there at the very bottom, is should we be mentioning extracurricular activities in our personal statement? I can't speak for other universities, but for us here at UCL Laws, you certainly should. As I mentioned, we are a very vibrant and interesting and happening law community. So we want to admit students who will contribute, not just by being academically excellent, but being able to join our moots and our debates and our client interviewing competition and work in our pro bono clinics. So being able to show that you have been a good student, but also have been doing other things. Think about extracurricular activities that are demonstrate skills that we may be looking for. So the debating is the obvious example, but I have given some other examples earlier on as well. The last thing I want to mention is career paths. You may be surprised to hear only 50% of our students actually study law with the intention of qualifying as practitioners. So people do law for very many other reasons, and a law is as flexible as a degree as any degree can be. In fact, if you're sitting there thinking, I am not entirely sure what degree I should be doing, law actually provides quite a good solution to that problem because it doesn't bind you into a specific career path. Yes, a lot of our students will go into qualification, and that involves either qualifying as a barrister or a solicitor. But a lot of our students find employment in other career paths. For example, in politics, in government, civil service, commercial management, banking is a very big employer, and of course international organizations, the EU, the United Nations, they are all big employers of lawyers. If you're not entirely sure that you want to practice as a lawyer, that doesn't necessarily mean that law is not a good degree for you. It will give you exceptionally strong skills that are well sought after by employers, and in that respect, it's a useful degree. I think this is where I would like to end. We are more than happy to answer more questions, address any issues or concerns you may have at this stage before you apply, and you've got my contact details up on the screen. By all means, send me an email, ask me anything that you haven't had the opportunity to ask today. Once again, thank you for your interest in studying law at UCL, and I very much look forward to welcoming you in the next couple of years. Thank you.